From Skrapar, the President has expressed concern that the political crisis is hampering tourism and, in turn, will bring about serious consequences to the Albanian economy. The Austrian ambassador once again appealed to Albanian political parties, stating now is the time for political dialogue as per the expectation of the Albanian citizens. The majority's proposal for establishing special conditions for the prosecution regarding investigations into MPs has started to be discussed in Parliament with the new opposition. It's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 15th of May 2019. Good evening and thank you for tuning in to RTV Ora's English edition. My name is Alexandra, bringing you the only daily update of the local Albanian news translated into English. President Ilir Meta called for urgent reflection for a solution to the country's crisis. The head of state was in Skrapar for the start of the new tourist season. Unfortunately, the political crisis in the country is bringing very serious consequences to the economy as well. The first effects are beginning to be felt in tourism, and operators are referring to it as a dramatic situation, said Meta. Therefore, says the President, it is worthwhile to reflect on it urgently, as otherwise tourism will be severely hit and all Albanian families that support their well-being with this key sector of our economy will be affected. Meanwhile, from the city of Skrapar, he conveyed a message for the opening of the new tourist season. Wishing you all the best for a successful tourist season. I am convinced that Skrapar, thanks to the extraordinary attractions it offers, the hospitality, the traditions and the special culinary delights, will soon be one of the most important tourist destinations in the whole region, expressed Meta. The European Enlargement Commissioner, Johannes Hahn, explained that he expects the decision to open accession negotiations for Albania and North Macedonia to be made before summer. Speaking to Radio Free Europe, he underlined that judicial reform in Albania and the achievement of the Prespa Agreement for North Macedonia must be rewarded. I think, especially when it comes to North Macedonia, that we must recognise the great progress this country has made in overcoming bilateral conflicts, which is a prerequisite for future European Union membership. Also, judicial reform in Albania is something that should be rewarded. So, in this regard, I think that this will be looked upon positively by our member states, said Hahn. Asked about the potential for suspension of visa liberalisation for Albanians, Commissioner Hahn stated that there were no such initiatives being discussed by the member states. However, he did call on the Albanian authorities to cooperate with the European Union countries and to keep the public regularly reminded that asylum applications will no longer be approved for Albanian citizens. It's something I've been discussing constantly with my partners in Albania and also in other countries. This should be fully addressed by the Albanian authorities, which means they should communicate. They should inform the people that all these initiatives are without any opportunity to be positively confirmed by the EU countries. But I have no indication that there are any initiatives by the member states to suspend, for example, visa liberalisation with Albania, explained Hahn. Furthermore, Hahn stated that the European Commission is trying to obtain the green light from the European Council for the opening of accession negotiations with Albania. As the local elections decreed for June 30 are approaching, foreign diplomats positioned in Albania have begun intensifying their stances towards the local political climate. The ambassador of Austria points out that it is now time to start dialogue. He even reminded leaders that violence is unacceptable and, in the end, they will be responsible for the situations created. After 5 national opposition protests and a challenging stance by Prime Minister Edi Rama, the Austrian ambassador to Albania, Johannes Hahn, says that now is the time for political dialogue. From Patos, the diplomat was clear in his message to Edi Rama and Lulzim Basha, stressing that this is also the expectation of the Albanian people. Citizens always have the right to protest. However, violence is something that we absolutely condemn. It is time for the parties to extend their hand to each other. After 5 protests, now is the time for political dialogue. This is what Albanians are expecting so that dialogue can work, said Sattler. Referring to the call of the Catholic bishops to stop the rhetoric of violence and hate, Ambassador Sattler reminded the political class that in the end, the responsibility will fall on them. I've seen a statement from the Catholic bishops and I encourage politicians to look at this statement in detail. It was addressed to the leaders of the country, the head of the government and the opposition chair. The message said to stop the rhetoric of violence and hate because hate brings hate. The rhetoric must change. The representatives are here to help, but the responsibility falls on the political actors in the country, said Ambassador Sattler. The statement comes just one day after Prime Minister Rama invited Basha for dialogue, but not for negotiations, and even refused the offer for the presence of internationals. The majority's proposal to set conditions for the prosecution in cases requiring investigations into the actions of an MP has begun to be examined in cooperation with the new parliamentary opposition. In the draft, presented 2 years ago, it is foreseen that the charging authority cannot demand the prohibition or prosecution of an MP without convincing evidence. The majority and the new parliamentary opposition have begun discussing the changes in the Assembly. While the leader of the Socialist Party parliamentary group, Talon Bala, promised he would not pass this draft without the Democratic Party's approval, it seems that, after the withdrawal of mandates, everything has changed. In the draft on the amendments to the rules of the Assembly, the Socialists seek restitution of constitutional protection from investigations, where the Socialist Party has proposed conditions on the prosecution. Upon revision of Article 118, the investigation or arrest of an MP may not be requested without the submission of compelling evidence before the Council of Legislation and Mandates in the Assembly. This debate took place also in the wake of the case against the former Minister of Interior, Saimir Tahiri. The proposals have faced antagonism from opposition MPs. The lifeless body of Major Claudia Antonuccis, proclaimed a martyr of the homeland after passing away from injuries sustained during a mine explosion while on a NATO mission in Latvia, has now arrived home. His coffin, covered in the Albanian flag, was carried by his colleagues, while Defence Minister Olta Jachka, Armed Forces Chief of General Staff Bardul Kulchaku, and Tanucci's parents and spouse gathered at Rennes Airport to receive Tanucci's body. The explosion of a mine in the Adazi camp of Latvia took the lives of 2 Albanian soldiers, Zarifa Hasanaj and Claudia Antonuccis, the latter who was a commander of the Albanian contingent. Major Tanucci passed away 4 days after the serious event in one of Latvia's hospitals due to the multiple injuries he sustained. A memorial service for the commander of the Albanian contingent in Latvia will be held tomorrow at the National History Museum from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. After the state ceremony, Major Tanucci will be given his last farewell at the Martyrs Cemetery in Tirana, where he will be eternally laid. One in 11 children in Albania have experienced unwanted sexual advances via the internet. The most recent UNICEF report was made public during a press conference organised by the Media Institute and AMA for Children's Media Education. According to an independent expert, the fact remains that half of children under 9 years old have online access. 1 in 10 children view online information on suicide. This is particularly problematic for security and also for sexual exploitation. 1 in 4 children communicate online with people they have not met, and 16% of them have met with a person who they had communicated with only on the internet. Meanwhile, only 9% of parents knew these facts, said an expert. Child online safety remains a challenge for educational institutions as well. Minister of Education Besa Shahini said that teachers are the ones who should serve the main role in educating students about safe navigation of the internet. It is the phenomenon of online bullying that is very worrying, but for which we are not well prepared to address, either as parents, as teachers, or as institutions, said the Minister of Education. Meanwhile, the Media Institute and the Audiovisual Media Authority, or AMA, asked the Ministry of Education for online safety to be dealt with as a subject in schools. Media education should be a special subject. We can imagine a 15-year-old which can do without astronomy, Saturn and Jupiter, but we cannot imagine a 15-year-old without Google, without Facebook or television. The Audiovisual Media Authority cannot replace the role of the Ministry of Education, agencies or other public entities that directly contribute to the introduction of media education concepts, said the chair of the AMA, Gentian Sala. And that's the news across the country today. Thank you for watching our English edition this evening, and be sure to join us again every Monday to Saturday at 6 p.m. for the latest news from Albania. Once again, on behalf of RTV Ora, thank you and good night.